This is a deep dive into Never Split the Difference by Voss. In this book, Voss, a former FBI hostage negotiator, reveals powerful negotiation tactics based on his real-world experiences. These lessons are designed not just for life or death situations, but for everyday scenarios. Whether you're asking for a raise, navigating a business deal, or simply trying to get your kids to clean their rooms. The key idea here is this: negotiations are not battles of logic, but of emotions and human connection. Let's explore chapter by chapter how you can master these principles. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. Chapter 1. The New Rules. In Chapter 1, Voss explains how traditional negotiation strategies often fail because they overlook human nature. Negotiations aren't about splitting differences or meeting halfway. They're about understanding emotions and motivations. Voss introduces the concept of tactical empathy, which means stepping into the other person's shoes to understand their perspective deeply. To make this point, he shares an example from his own experience at Harvard, where he had to negotiate a high-pressure, role-playing scenario. Instead of rushing to counter the demands, he calmly asked, "How am I supposed to do that?" This simple question shifted the pressure back onto the other party and opened the door to collaboration. The takeaway here is that empathy isn't about agreeing, it's about understanding. And remember, no deal is better than a bad deal. Sometimes the best negotiation strategy is to walk away. What can you do today? Practice active listening. Next time you're in a conversation, repeat back what the other person said to ensure you understand. Avoid quick compromises, and instead, dig deeper to uncover their true motivations. Chapter 2. Be a mirror. Chapter 2 introduces mirroring as a surprisingly effective negotiation tool. At its core, mirroring involves repeating the last few words, or a key phrase, of what someone has just said. While it may seem too simple to be effective, mirroring is incredibly powerful because it encourages the other person to keep talking, often revealing valuable insights. This technique subtly signals that you're paying close attention, which builds trust and fosters openness. For instance, imagine you're negotiating with a supplier and they say, "This price reflects the rising cost of materials." Instead of countering or rushing to agree, you might respond, "Rising cost of materials?" This small echo encourages them to elaborate, possibly uncovering details about market changes, their constraints, or even areas of flexibility. Mirroring does more than keep the conversation flowing. It helps build rapport. By reflecting their words back, you make the other person feel heard, which is a cornerstone of effective negotiation. Voss emphasizes that the goal is collaboration, not confrontation, and mirroring shifts the dynamic toward working together rather than against each other. To practice this, use mirroring in your next interaction, whether at work or in daily life. It's a low-pressure way to engage more deeply in conversations, showing interest and attention without the need for immediate agreement or rebuttal. As you build this habit, you'll notice how naturally people open up when they feel truly understood. Chapter 3. Don't feel their pain. Label it. Chapter 3 introduces the concept of labeling emotions as a way to build trust and diffuse tension in negotiations. Everyone wants to feel understood, and labeling their emotions achieves this by showing that you're paying attention to what they're feeling. For instance, if someone seems frustrated during a discussion, you might say, "It sounds like you're feeling overwhelmed." This simple acknowledgement validates their emotions and creates a sense of connection. What makes labeling powerful is that it doesn't require agreement. Voss stresses that labeling isn't about taking sides or condoning their perspective. It's about recognizing their reality. For example, in a business context, labeling frustrations can reduce defensiveness and open the door to a more productive conversation. Instead of arguing or trying to fix the problem immediately, labeling provides space for emotions to be expressed and understood. Voss also highlights the importance of silence in this process. After labeling, resist the urge to jump in or fill the gap. Give the other person room to respond, as this pause often prompts them to explain further, providing deeper insights into their concerns or motivations. To start using this technique, focus on actively listening to not just the words, but the tone, body language, and underlying emotions in conversations. When you sense strong feelings, use phrases like, "it seems like," or "it sounds like," to label them. Over time, you'll find that this approach helps build rapport and turns tense discussions into opportunities for collaboration and problem solving. Chapter 4, Beware. Yes, Master, No. In Chapter 4, Voss fundamentally changes how we think about the words yes and no in negotiation. We often see yes as the ultimate goal, a sign of progress, but Voss argues that yes is frequently superficial. It's easy for someone to say yes just to move the conversation along or avoid conflict without real commitment behind it. On the other hand, a no can be a gateway to honest dialogue and real clarity because it puts the other person in a position of control. Consider this. Instead of asking, "Do you agree with this proposal?" a question that pressures the other person toward a potentially insincere yes, you could ask, "Is there anything about this proposal that you disagree with?" This reframe invites them to express their true thoughts, creating an opportunity to address concerns head-on. Now, when someone says no, it often means they feel safer and more in control, which paradoxically opens them up to collaboration. Voss emphasizes that no is not the end of a conversation. It's the beginning of meaningful negotiation. It helps reveal where both parties actually stand and what obstacles need to be resolved. To practice this approach, frame your questions to allow for a no. Instead of asking, "Can I call you now?" try, "Is this a bad time to call?" This small change takes the pressure off and invites an honest response. By embracing no as a tool rather than a barrier, you'll open up pathways to more productive conversations. Chapter 5. Trigger the 2 words that transform negotiations. In Chapter 5, Voss explains the power of 2 simple words. That's right. These words signal a moment of genuine understanding between you and the other person. When someone says, "That's right," they're affirming that you truly understand their position, which is far more meaningful than a dismissive, "You're right." The difference is subtle but critical. "That's right" reflects alignment, while "you're right" often feels like a polite agreement without real depth. To elicit a "that's right" response, Voss advises summarizing the other person's perspective in a way that captures their emotions and concerns. For example, if a colleague is frustrated about a delayed project, you could say, "It sounds like you're worried that the team doesn't have enough resources to meet the deadline." When they reply, "That's right," you validated their feelings and established trust. This moment of connection can transform the negotiation into a collaborative problem-solving effort. This technique isn't about manipulation. It's about truly listening and empathizing with the other person's concerns. By reflecting their perspective back to them in a clear and respectful way, you create a sense of partnership. Once you've reached a "that's right" moment, you'll find it much easier to move the negotiation forward. Please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. Chapter 6. Bend Their Reality. Chapter 6 dives into how to shape the other party's perception of the negotiation. Voss introduces 2 key techniques: anchoring and leveraging loss aversion. Anchoring involves setting the tone of the conversation with an extreme offer, one that makes your actual target seem reasonable by comparison. For example, if you're selling a product, you might initially highlight its premium value or high-end features before introducing a discounted price. The contrast makes the discount feel more compelling. Loss aversion, on the other hand, taps into a fundamental human tendency. People are more motivated to avoid losses than to achieve equivalent gains. Instead of emphasizing what the other party might gain from a deal, frame the discussion around what they stand to lose if the deal falls through. For instance, you could say, "If we don't move forward, you could miss out on being first to market." Voss also stresses the importance of creating the illusion of control. This means letting the other party feel like they're driving the conversation, even as you subtly guide them toward your desired outcome. Ask open-ended questions like, "How can we make this work?" or "What would it take to solve this problem?" These questions encourage collaboration while keeping the focus on your goals. The key to bending their reality is flexibility. While you use anchoring and loss aversion to shape the discussion, you must remain adaptable to their responses and emotions. Negotiation is as much about guiding perceptions as it is about reaching agreements. Chapter 7. Create the illusion of control. Building on the techniques from Chapter 6, Chapter 7 focuses on using calibrated questions to give the other party a sense of control while uncovering critical information. Calibrated questions are open-ended, starting with what or how, and they are designed to steer the conversation in a productive direction. Importantly, why questions are avoided as they often put people on the defensive. For instance, instead of asking, "Why are you against this proposal?" you might ask, "What concerns do you have about moving forward?" Or, "How do you see this fitting into your overall plan?" These types of questions not only make the other person feel heard, but also encourage them to share valuable details about their priorities and constraints. Another essential tool in this chapter is silence. After posing a question, resist the urge to fill the silence. People naturally want to fill gaps in conversation, and their responses often reveal key insights. For example, if you ask, "What challenges might we face with implementation?" and wait, the other party is likely to provide more information than they initially intended. By shifting the focus back to the other person and allowing them to feel in control, you can uncover their deeper motivations and guide the negotiation toward a mutually beneficial outcome. The illusion of control is powerful because it lowers defenses and fosters openness, even when you're strategically steering the conversation. Chapter 8. Guarantee execution. Execution is everything, and in Chapter 8, Voss highlights that a negotiation doesn't end when both parties agree. It ends when the deal is carried out successfully. This requires addressing both visible and hidden obstacles. While one person might agree to your terms, unseen stakeholders or internal roadblocks can prevent effective execution. For example, in a corporate negotiation, the CEO might be on board, but a skeptical finance team could block the implementation. To avoid this, Voss suggests asking calibrated questions like, "How will this decision impact your team?" Or, "What challenges do you see with making this happen?" These questions encourage the other person to reveal hidden concerns or unspoken issues that might disrupt follow-through. When they voice these concerns, you can work collaboratively to address them before they derail progress. Additionally, Voss emphasizes the importance of nonverbal cues. If someone hesitates or their tone changes, it's a sign they may not be fully committed. Address this head-on by asking clarifying questions like, "What would make you feel more comfortable moving forward?" Finally, prioritize clarity. Before closing the negotiation, explicitly define roles, responsibilities, and timelines. This ensures everyone knows who's doing what and when, leaving no room for ambiguity. Execution is the true measure of a successful negotiation, so always prepare for the practical steps ahead. Chapter 9. Bargain hard. Chapter 9 introduces one of the most practical tools in the book, the Ackerman model. This structured approach to bargaining helps you stay in control while making the other party feel like they've won. The process involves starting with an ambitious offer, something just outside of what's reasonable, and then gradually making smaller concessions to appear flexible while staying within your ideal range. Here's an example. Let's say you're negotiating a raise. Your goal is $80,000, but you start by asking for $90,000. When the other side pushes back, you lower your demand incrementally, first to $87,000, then to $83,000, before finally relent to $80,000. To the other person, it feels like they've pushed you down significantly, even though you've landed exactly where you wanted. The genius of this model is how it uses psychology to create a sense of fairness. Voss stresses that every concession you make should feel earned by the other party, which makes them more satisfied with the final outcome. Another critical element of hard bargaining is maintaining a friendly, even playful demeanor. Humor and rapport disarm tension, making even tough negotiations feel less confrontational. This helps keep the discussion collaborative, even as you stick firmly to your strategy. Hard bargaining doesn't mean being rigid. It means being strategic, empathetic, and clear about your goals. Chapter 10. Find the Black Swan. In the final chapter, Voss introduces the idea of black swans, unexpected pieces of information that can completely change the course of a negotiation. These are the hidden factors that most people overlook, but they can give you an enormous advantage when uncovered. For example, imagine you're negotiating a contract with a client who seems unusually resistant. Instead of pushing harder, you dig deeper by asking calibrated questions like, "What's most important to you in this partnership?" Or, What concerns might I not be seeing? Through this, you might discover that the client values prestige more than price. Armed with this knowledge, you can frame your product as the most exclusive or high-status option, shifting the focus away from cost. Black swans often reveal themselves when you approach negotiations with curiosity and empathy. It requires listening deeply and being attuned to the other party's motivations, fears, and aspirations. Voss reminds us to assume that there's always more information to uncover, information that could dramatically shift the negotiation in your favor. One practical way to identify black swans is to explore the counterpart's religion, as Voss puts it. This means understanding their deeper worldview, values, and priorities. Whether they're driven by security, recognition, or loyalty, aligning your proposal with these values can create unexpected breakthroughs. Finding black swans is both an art and a science. It requires patience, attention to detail, and a willingness to adapt your strategy as new information comes to light. But when you uncover these hidden gems, they can transform even the toughest negotiations into clear wins. Before we wrap up, please don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference is more than a negotiation manual. It's a guide to understanding human behavior and building meaningful connections. From mastering tactical empathy to uncovering black swans, these techniques demonstrate that negotiation isn't about compromise. It's about collaboration. Whether you're negotiating at work, at home, or in everyday life, these lessons are tools to achieve better outcomes while strengthening relationships. Remember, every conversation holds an opportunity if you listen closely and approach it with care. Start applying these principles today, and you'll see the difference they make.